Thanks for joining me again as we look back at another great classic film. This is a gritty film noir that takes a close look at the seedy side of boxing and the people who struggle to survive in an environment in which few come through unscathed. It has a lead actor who has actual experience and ability as a boxer, and he leads a no-name cast who are all totally believable in their roles, and uses what is an unusual technique of telling the film's story in real time. It is The Setup from 1949. In 1947, RKO paid Joseph Moncure March a little over $1,000 for the rights to his 1928 book-length narrative poem of the same name. At the time, March had spent nearly a decade writing mostly bad films in Hollywood, so the adaptation was handed to Art Cohn. Director Robert Wise wanted his film to remain faithful to the original poem and was keen to cast former boxer turned actor Canada Lee, who had appeared in Body and Soul in 1947. RKO vetoed the idea, feeling there were no black actors of sufficient stature at the time, upsetting March as it meant that the black boxer from his poem, Pansy Jones, was changed into the white Stoker Thompson. Other significant changes included changing the protagonist from a bigamist to a devoted married man, and his beating and subsequent death on a subway track into an alley assault and a shattered hand. His opponent's name was changed from Sailor Grey to Tiger Nelson. Art Cohn, being a former sports writer, had a lot of first-hand experience with boxing, and many of the script's colourful supporting characters, such as the blind man who had to have the fight described to him, came from his experiences in San Francisco. After attending several fights, Wise added other characters including the sports nut, who listens to a ball game on the radio during the brawl. Wise also hung out in the dressing rooms, watching and listening to the fighters before and after their fights. The story elements that most appealed to Wise is the fight at the heart of the film, and it's because it's not a championship bout, just a regional fight late on the card. Although Wise wasn't able to cast an African American in the lead, he did have James Edwards in a minor role as another boxer. Wise was criticised for evading the issue of discrimination and pandering to the box office, avoiding potentially losing money in the segregated South. Robert Ryan, who was cast as Stoker Thompson, had experience as a boxer at Dartmouth College, where he was heavyweight champion 4 years in a row. Despite this, Ryan did not really have cauliflower ears. His left ear was made up to look like it was badly damaged, but his right ear has a small amount of actual damage that's visible in all of his films. Wise and Sid Rogel considered Joan Blondell for the role of Julie, following her performance in Nightmare Alley, but RKO owner Howard Hughes refused. Instead, Audrey Totter was cast. She was something of a crime and film noir veteran, having appeared in The Postman Always Rings Twice, Lady in the Lake, and Alias Nick Beale prior to this film. Uncredited producer Dor Sherry made the brave decision to give the film a real-time narrative structure, 3 years before it was used in High Noon. Also, instead of music, the opening credits roll to the sound of a boxing match, crowd noise, the shuffling of feet, bodily impacts, and the ever-present bell. The film's co-producer, Richard Goldstone, was relatively inexperienced, having only worked on a half a dozen Our Gang comedy shorts, which may explain their willingness to experiment. The shoot took only 20 days and featured a main fight scene between Stoker and his opponent that is very close to the original poem. It was choreographed by former professional boxer Johnny Indrisano and was shot using 3 cameras to capture the action. One focused on the entire ring, one on the fighters, and a third handheld device to catch details such as the gloves connecting with the body. Wise had begun his career editing films such as Citizen Kane and The Magnificent Ambersons, and was greatly impressed with the resulting footage. When editor Roland Gross couldn't come up with a cut that satisfied Wise, he did the editing himself. This was the last film Robert Wise directed for RKO. It was his favourite film at the studio and one of the top 10 of his career. On its release, the New York Times lauded the picture's screenplay and the realistic depiction of the boxing game. The first week it opened, the film grossed $245,000 and remained the #1 film in the United States for 2 weeks. In 1949, it took out Best Cinematography at Cannes and Best Film at Toronto, and was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Film. Martin Scorsese is a big fan of the film, first seeing it on 16mm during a college film course. He was so impressed by the boxing sequences he felt the need to deliberately avoid copying any of Wise's camera tricks when making Raging Bull. Scorsese finds the central match to be amongst the most visceral fight scenes in cinema history. He sees the film as an allegory for the chaos of life, populated by characters who aren't just down on their luck, but are flat out of luck. The Setup is often cited by modern critics as one of the most influential boxing films of its time. Robert Ryan has cited his role in The Setup as his favourite. So lots of good reasons to watch this film. It's a tense, gritty film noir that is amongst the best boxing films ever made. It has great performances by actors and non-actors alike, and takes you on a rough ride, but one which didn't end so quickly. So what I'd suggest you do is that you go to our website, find our virtual screenings page, find the link to this particular film, definitely click on and watch it. As always, love to hear what you think about the film, and let us know if you'd recommend it for other people as well. And then we're back in the not too distant future for our next classic films review. Catch you next time.